So in sport, you don't win the race on race day. You're winning it each and every day that you push that little bit harder in training. You take on that extra challenge. And it's very similar when dealing with a disability like blindness or low vision.
Welcome to Season 6 of EyeCan, a podcast about ophthalmology through a uniquely Canadian lens. EyeCan is co-hosted by me, Patty Sahed, and Heather O'Donnell. Throughout the season, we'll have guest co-hosts for some of our shows. We will share our experiences as ophthalmologists today and tackle some of the challenges we face as healthcare providers. Season 6 of EyeCan is brought to you by Astellas Pharma Canada and Johnson & Johnson Vision. We thank them for their support. Hi, everyone. Welcome to EyeCan. Our guest host on today's episode is Dr. Cynthia Kian, COS board member, chair of Council on Continuing Professional Development. Cynthia pitched the idea of this episode, and I'm excited to have her join me.
Our guest today is Victoria Nolan, a world champion rower, author, TV personality, and advocate for people living with blindness and other disabilities. Along with Shawn Maloney, she is co-author of the book Refocus, the essential guide to living with a happy and successful life with vision loss. Victoria went blind when her daughter was born and has since faced the world in the dark. She chooses hope over fear and embraces uncertainty as a challenge to overcome. Vicky is determined to push limits. She has won 8 medals for Team Canada and competed in 4 Paralympic Games. Now pursuing her MBA at Queen's University, she also serves as national manager for one of Canada's largest nonprofit organizations, CNIB, and recently completed the Institute of Corporate Directors designation. Vicky, welcome to EyeCan. We're excited to have an elite athlete on our show and learn more about your journey. Let's jump right in.
So, Vicky, we're so impressed by your book, Refocus, and its aim to reshape public perceptions of vision loss. We'd love to hear more about what you felt were the top misconceptions that you were hoping to dispel.
Yeah, so I think the main reason that we wrote the book was because both Shawn and I have retinitis pigmentosa, and this is the kind of book that we both wish existed when we had the diagnosis. The biggest misconception for people who are diagnosed is that I think that they're not going to have a future or the future that they imagined. I think there's a loss of purpose in life, a lot of confusion, and I think that is due to misinformation. And so this book was written to help people who get that diagnosis to know that just because you get this diagnosis of blindness or low vision doesn't mean that your purpose disappears. It means you're likely going to have to do things differently, but it doesn't change who you are or the type of goals that you want to pursue.
Yeah, for sure. And so from your perspective, what do you feel is the most, or what are the most critical steps someone can take when first adapting to a life with vision loss?
So we've laid out the book with something called the 7 A's, and it's sort of the step-by-step process that you need to go through in this journey. And step number 1 is acceptance. And we describe it in Refocus as not saying that you have to like what is happening. That's not what acceptance is, but it's acknowledging that you're about to go on a journey and accepting that you're willing to take on this new path and to figure out how to navigate it. It's going to take some work to figure out this path and to do it differently, but just recognizing that you're up for the challenge and you're going to go down that path.
Vicky, I just wanted to hear your perspective as an elite athlete. Through the book, you described that you discovered rowing actually as a young adult. And I think, the discovery of the vision loss and the evolution as an athlete kind of came not necessarily one after the other, but, was perhaps hand in hand. So I was just wondering, what mental strategies or tools have you found most effective in overcoming challenges not only related to sport, but also to vision loss and in daily life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in sport, one of the advantages I found to training is to acknowledge that to get to those big long-term goals, you have those smaller daily goals that you can achieve. And even though they may seem insignificant, those little small goals all add up in the end. So in sport, you don't win the race on race day. You're winning it each and every day that you push that little bit harder in training. You take on that extra challenge. And it's very similar when dealing with a disability like blindness or low vision. It's recognizing that those little daily challenges, they can seem insurmountable, but if you look at them like, what is the smallest step I can take today towards that goal? Even if it may seem insignificant, it's not, because you're moving that little bit further towards that bigger goal, and it all adds up. And just having that patience to recognize, if I push myself a little bit more, eventually I'm going to get where I want to go.
That's great advice. And I think you also mentioned that having a really good support system is also essential in that process. You do mention how helpful and how understanding your husband has been, as well as your children. So can you define a little bit how important is the role of that support network in the journey toward living a happy and successful life with vision loss?
Yeah, the support network is everything. And I recognized early on that that is something that you do have control over. So it's important to surround yourself with people who are going to build you up and give you that support. If you find that there's someone in your life who's, holding you back or, not supporting you towards that goal, maybe you want to focus more on the people who are doing that. And so for me, my husband was incredible. The opportunities that I had, I would second guess. So for example, learning how to row, I was invited to join the national team very shortly after learning how to row. And, the idea excited me, but I thought I can't have that time away from my family. And so initially I said no. When my husband found out that I said no, he's like, you're crazy. You have to do this. And it was the best thing that could have happened. But obviously without his support to look after the family while I was away training, I couldn't have done it. So I think it's also important to recognize, like for me, I'm a very independent person. It's hard for me to ask for help. And I think sometimes I see it as a weakness. And I think it's important to recognize that asking for help isn't a weakness. It's actually the smart thing to do to empower yourself to minimize that exhaustion, because you can get really tired from all of the extra steps you have to take. When you have low vision, everything takes a little bit longer and it can wear on you. And so the smart thing to do is get help for those little things that you need and save your energy for the bigger things that you want to accomplish.
We'll just shift gears a little bit and talk about ophthalmologists and how they can be part of this journey. So for us, when we're sitting with a patient who's lost vision, often there's this feeling of loss because our priority is to try and help patients maintain vision. Even though ultimately when we go into medicine, we want to help the whole human and the entire life. As an ophthalmologist, we end up becoming quite focused on preserving vision. So when we do have a patient lose vision, it's often devastating for us and of course for the patient. And so do you have any advice for us as the ophthalmologist on how we can better support patients, both emotionally and practically, when we're delivering that diagnosis of vision loss?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a really good understanding and awareness of what is possible for people who have low vision or blindness. Because when you realize what's possible, what people are achieving, then it's not as scary. Fear always comes from the unknown. And so someone gets a diagnosis of blindness, low vision, they don't know what their future is going to look like. That's terrifying. But if you know that, hey, there are people out there doing all these amazing, careers, living full lives, traveling, doing all these great things, then it starts to become a little more manageable. So I think if ophthalmologists are aware of those possibilities and are able to communicate to patients, so they know, like, you can still have purpose, you can still have a really happy life. It might look a little bit different, that's all.
Yeah, that's great perspective, I think, for when we're on the other side of, the examining slit lamp or the exam room to really take back with us, I think, and put ourselves in the perspective of the person that we're examining or following for a vision condition.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also curious, how do you see advances in technology, especially in assistive technology and tools? How does that influence life for individuals with vision loss? And, are there innovations that have had the biggest impact on your own experience?
Oh, yes. Technology is amazing. It's really shifting more independence to the individual. So, things where I would have had to ask for help before, I can now do using AI or, different apps on my phone. Yeah, it's life changing. And I think one of the greatest things is that a lot of this technology isn't specifically for people who are blind or low vision, right? Like artificial intelligence is helping us in so many ways that's helping everybody. And so the way that it's advancing is exponential. So it is very exciting. I think also it's a great advantage. Like I work with a lot of children and youth who have low vision and blindness. And so teaching them to be experts in this technology, it's starting to put them as like not only on a level playing field as their peers, but it's putting them ahead, right? Because they're becoming experts in coding and AI and they can teach their peers about it. So it's pretty exciting.
One of the more impressive things about your journey, Victoria, is your athletic achievements. And so, what do you feel are some of the unique lessons that you learned as a Paralympian that you think could be extrapolated to anyone facing challenges, regardless of their circumstances?
A couple of lessons have come out of being a Paralympic athlete. One of the big ones is recognizing that excellence can happen outside of perfection. So you don't have to have perfect conditions. It doesn't have to be a perfect training leading up to that competition, and excellence can still come out of that. And so recognizing that with disability, even though you have struggles, things are challenging, doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to achieve what you're trying to achieve. The other thing I would say that's come out of Paralympic sport is the idea of just finding a way, problem solving. So, coaches in sport, that's their job, is to figure out how can they maximize the output of the athletes. And whether that's an able-bodied athlete or an athlete with a disability, it's always like problem solving. How can we make you faster, stronger? And I feel like I do that on a daily basis with dealing with vision loss as well. It's like, okay, I'm struggling with this. What can I do to make it better? I'm constantly problem solving. And I don't know, I find it's not only like helping me to cope with my disability, but it's also just, developing my thinking skills and I've always been like a lifelong learner. So I just love that idea of constantly moving forward, adapting, changing, figuring things out, how to be better.
I'm curious, Victoria, how much of your current champion attitude do you feel was part of you prior to losing vision? Because it's so impressive, and my guess is how impressive you are, and if you don't, well, you're very impressive. And I'm wondering how much of that was part of you before and just evolved after you lost vision, or do you feel like it's a completely new part of you that you almost don't even identify as being part of you prior to vision loss?
That is a great question. I would absolutely say it was not part of my personality at all beforehand. I was very quiet and shy. I actually was terrible in gym class because so with retinitis pigmentosa, you lose your vision gradually. So when I was a kid, I didn't know I had an eye problem. I just thought I was clumsy. So I was terrible at sports, did not like to speak up in class, like even to answer questions. Yeah, so I wouldn't describe myself as courageous or, motivational or any of those adjectives prior to vision loss. And I spend a lot of time talking about all my successes with rowing, and there was a period of time where I was afraid to leave my house. So I know what it's like to have that feeling of, there's no purpose for me anymore in life. What am I going to do? Like, what's my future going to look like? I did go through all of that. I've just obviously moved on from then. A couple of important pieces of advice that I received during that time. One was, oftentimes when people have this diagnosis, they think, all of my challenges are because I can't see. And it often turns out that the challenge is actually depression. So I think that's something that really needs to be looked at. So it's depression can be what stops you from that problem solving, from that trying to move forward. Once you have the depression treated, then all of a sudden your brain is free to, come up with those solutions, come up with those ideas of how you're going to keep moving forward. So I think that's a big piece. Also, reaching out to the community of people who've been through this before, that was a big turning point for me. Mainly for me, it was finding out about guide dogs. That gave me a huge amount of independence to get back out into the community again. But, if you're not at that point yet, even just reaching out to the community to figure out how do you navigate these things? What tools are out there to help me? Or, what did you do to get over this challenge? So that's huge. And and finding rowing was, I think, probably the biggest thing, the biggest turning point for me. Gaining some sense of being able again, that was huge in giving me that self-esteem. And and just that's built up over time. Obviously, I joined rowing just to participate and to make my kids proud. And then within a few years, I was representing Canada. So really took it a lot further than I intended. But so there's a lot in there. But I think over time, it's possible to get to this point.
That's so inspirational, and I think motivational too. As we were listening to you, both of us, Hattie, and our whole audience, Victoria. Actually, it made me think, because I see patients with retinitis pigmentosa, and I have a young patient who's just turned 20, and she is on the provincial goalball team. And her aspiration, she told me she'd like to go to the Paralympics. So for a young athlete like that, I think, is there a message that you would give to the 20-year-old you, or something that would kind of give them that confidence and that boost that they can get to the next stage and to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say from my own experience, it's going to be a tough road. There's going to be times when you wonder why you're putting yourself through this. As long as you love the sport, you love what you're doing, you go for it, because when you get to the other end, the more challenges you've been through, the more sacrifices you've made, the bigger thrill it's going to be at the other end when you get there. So definitely, whenever you're going through those rough times, that's when you're making yourself elite.
Excellent. And I think, that the book Refocus, it's such a great read. I listened to it, and I really loved all the personal experiences and anecdotes both you and Shawn have put into it. If you could share one takeaway from the book with both individuals experiencing vision loss and the professionals supporting them, what would be your key takeaway message?
The most important message, as I mentioned before, is to know that you are not alone, that there's a community of people who've been through this, who would be happy to support you, to give you the information you need. And once you have that information, there's no stopping you.
EyeCan wants to know what you think. Please send your comments on today's episode or any suggestions you may have for topics or features to communications@cos-sco.ca, and we'll try to incorporate them into future episodes.
EyeCan veut savoir ce que vous en pensez. Veuillez envoyer vos commentaires sur le balado d'aujourd'hui ou vos recommandations de sujets à communication@cos-sco.ca, et nous essaierons de les intégrer dans les prochains épisodes.
Je suis Mona Daguerre et j'écoute le balado EyeCan.
I was hoping to unpack the question about the advice to ophthalmologists interacting with a patient with vision loss, and maybe get a little bit more advice from you about particular situations. So I think somebody dealing with chronic gradual vision loss probably has an awareness that things are going in a certain direction, and there's, probably part of the acceptance is happening, between visits. But sometimes it happens that we're dealing with somebody who has a sudden vision loss, and then they're seeing us, in the acute setting, and we're delivering information to them about, what things might look like in the future and what the likelihood is of vision recovery. And in some cases, the likelihood of vision recovery is low. And so I'm finding it really difficult to imagine sharing, some of the inspiration that you shared with us today in a moment like that, where, it's such a tough moment for the patient and for the ophthalmologist as well, as they're accepting this difficult news.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts about what could be empowering at that time, but also, tone sensitive? This is probably not the time to inspire them with all these amazing stories of people who are doing
Absolutely.
incredible things despite their challenges. So do you think, though, given that, do you think that there's anything that can be shared at that time that could still be helpful, and even though they're very sad, can leave them with some hope or something to follow up on, in days or weeks or months later when they're in a better place?
It's a great question. And I mean, it's so individual, right? So I don't think there's necessarily a generic thing you can say, but definitely taking it down to, where are they at in their life? So are they looking at like, am I still going to be able to work? Well, yes, you can still be able, you're still able to work. We're going to have to figure out what that looks like. You're going to have to be patient in resolving what that might look like, what supports you need. It's going to take time. But I think, along those lines of just reassuring the person that life isn't over. I think it's not just the losing vision. It's like, do I have a life anymore? And yes, you do. It's just that you weren't expecting to have to figure out a different path to take. So I don't know if that helps, but it depends what stage of life they're in, right? If they're, just coming out of university, or if they're looking at retirement, or it's like, okay, what's next and how is that going to look different? And can you still have the same goals that you had before? Yes, you can. It's just going to be a different way to get there.
Love that. Thank you. So as we wrap up our chat with you, we're hoping to do a lightning round where we can ask you some questions meant to be kind of rapid fire way to get to know you on a little bit more of a personal level. So my first question to you is, if you weren't a Paralympian athlete, what do you think you would be doing today?
Oh, great question. So I was in teaching before. That's the direction I was headed in before all of this happened. So I think I would be a world-renowned educational expert.
That's fun. Teacher and a rower. Well, that's what you've kind of made your
Yes.
life goal.
Yeah.
Another question. So if you could train with any athlete, past or present, who would it be?
My hero is Chantal Petitclerc. So she is a Paralympic wheelchair racer. And she's just wildly decorated in gold medals. She actually competed at the Olympics one year. She's now a senator for Canada.
Do you have a pre-race ritual or superstition that you tend to stick to?
Everything like my uniform and everything is all laid out exactly the same way. So I know where everything is. And I am very quiet. I'll put in headphones and I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm very focused and mentally preparing, which was sometimes a challenge because some of my teammates are the opposite and they, need to chat. And so we had to work all of that out ahead of time. Who needs to be left alone and where can you guys go to be loud?
And following up on that, I know that, all the sports and all the athletes are very diverse in terms of preferences and background, but do you think there's misconceptions that people have about a Paralympic athlete?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're still very behind in support for Paralympics. We still don't get as much viewership as the Olympic Games. There's often the perception that Paralympians, it's kind of a participation event, which is completely not true. Paralympians train the same as Olympians. In fact, for rowing, Team Canada has everyone training together, doing the same workouts. So yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception is that we don't work as hard as Olympians.
I'm curious to know if you're a coffee or a tea drinker before your training. What do you use to give yourself a boost?
Coffee,
love
definitely.
it. Yeah.
No hesitation.
No.
I also had a question. So you co-wrote this book with Shawn Maloney, who's actually a personal friend. We go back to his days when he was working in vision research in a lab. And so I'm curious how you met and how this idea and concept for the book came about and how long it was before you put it on paper.
Yeah, so as you know, Shawn hosts a podcast, so that's how we met. I was a guest on Broad Eye. So we stayed in touch since then. And it was actually Shawn's idea. But as I said in the beginning of the podcast, I wish that there was a book like this when I was first diagnosed. I remember the first time I went to a conference and heard someone else speaking who had RP, and just how amazing it was to feel like I'm not alone. So yeah, I was definitely on board with helping him write this book. And our backgrounds are very different, complementary. So I thought it was a great fit. So he has the science and research background and some business background, and then I have more of the education and the sports. So it was a good fit. Took a while to write, and we realized both of us are on the lower end of the vision that we have left. And so it became a little tough with the editing. So we could get all our thoughts down, but trying to, actually move pieces of the writing around, and that became a challenge. And so we hired an editor to help us with that. So I think it was, all in all, I think it was 2 years working on it all together. We just released it this summer.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell it's a labor of a lot of passion and love. And how I see it is, not only it's a very positive outlook for people who are experiencing vision loss, but I think anybody could be reading it to learn about how to be addressing a period where there's challenges and where you need to adapt to a new unknown situation. So I think it's really a book to learn about vision loss, but also for anyone who's facing any challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah. We realized that as we were writing it, and we were thinking of writing a follow-up version that could apply to any kind of challenge in life. But I think it was such a challenge writing the first one. It'll be a while before we look at doing another one.
Well, Victoria, this has been so inspiring and helpful to learn about so many of your lessons. It allows us to reflect and also hopefully to share with some of our patients things they can consider in their own journeys. So thank you for spending the time today and sharing all of this. And our thanks to you and Shawn for putting a lot of these thoughts on paper. And thank you, Cynthia, for introducing the idea of chatting with Victoria and for being here as our co-host. This has been really great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. No, and I really appreciate you sharing these thoughts with your patients.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We look forward to bringing you more engaging content over the coming months.
Merci de vous être joint à nous pour cet épisode. Nous avons hâte de vous proposer d'autres contenus captivants au cours des prochains mois.
EyeCan wants to know what you think. Please send your comments on today's episode or any suggestions you may have for topics or features to communications@cos-sco.ca, and we'll try to incorporate them into future episodes.
EyeCan veut savoir ce que vous en pensez. Veuillez envoyer vos commentaires sur le balado d'aujourd'hui ou vos recommandations de sujets à communication@cos-sco.ca et nous essaierons de les intégrer dans les prochains épisodes.
Thank you from the Canadian Ophthalmological Society.
Merci de la part de la Société canadienne d'Ophthalmologie. Our sponsors for Season 6 of EyeCan are Astellas Pharma Canada and Johnson & Johnson Vision. We thank them for their support.
EyeCan is available wherever you listen to your podcasts and, of course, through the COS Practice Resource Center.
EyeCan est disponible partout où vous écoutez vos balados et bien sûr au Centre de ressources pour la pratique de la SCO.
Listening to EyeCan counts for unaccredited MOC credits. Listeners may claim 0.5 credits per hour under Section 2, which is individual learning as educational content review, and that can be done up to 30 credits per year.
EyeCan is written and directed by Kim Teitler and produced by John Allaire from Allaire Strategic Works.
EyeCan est écrit et réalisé par Kim Teitler et produit par John Allaire d'Allaire Strategic Works. Some episodes this season will include relevant links and show notes, so be sure to check episode descriptions to learn more. Certains épisodes de cette saison incluront des liens pertinents dans les notes d'émission, alors n'oubliez pas de consulter les descriptions des épisodes pour en savoir plus.
If any of our listeners have topic ideas to submit, please email them to communications@cos-sco.ca, and we will review for consideration.